Card games. I've played quite a few of them. Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic, Pokemon, and there's been a few that I've even played that I know no longer exist. Two great examples are actually the Harry Potter game and today's very topic, Duel Masters. Duel Masters was a pretty damn interesting attempt at trying to usurp the popularity of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game back when I was a young kid during the early 2000s. If anyone doesn't remember this, Duel Masters was a card game created by the same people who made Magic. So, it came from a good studio, so why did it fail? How did it even play, and where did it go? Well, first of all, we need to make it obvious. This failed for one reason and one reason only. Market saturation. Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, and believe it or not, Digimon were always big card games, and trying to find space on the playground was hard. If anyone doesn't remember, card games were kind of a hit or miss. You either did really good right away and everybody was playing it on the playground, or people didn't spend their money on it and they sat on shelves and didn't sell, eventually ending up in discount bins. Unfortunately, Duel Masters was that very type of card game. It didn't do very good and it sat on shelves for a while. Anime, toys, cards, and hell, even a starter deck that came with the DVD all didn't do very good. So, well, yeah. And eventually, after 2 full sets, they just shut it down. But it's still going in Japan. I find that pretty funny that a card game that failed in the States is doing really good in Japan. I'm kind of curious to see how much the game did advance in Japan versus like what we got to, because like Magic itself has advanced so much since the early 2000s, so I'm just curious what exactly happened there. So, okay, how in the world did Magic play? Well, for people who don't understand, Duel Masters played with a combination of mechanics from Magic, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Or maybe not Yu-Gi-Oh!, maybe Digimon. We'll get there a little closer. So, this is a Magic card. I know. Ooh, most of you've never seen, or not a Magic card, Duel Masters card. Sorry, I'm going to say it a lot throughout this video. This is a Duel Masters card. Very interesting, don't you think? You see a little number at the bottom? Well, that's a little mana counter. We'll get to it. And I know Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. This is scary. Ooh. So, of course of all, decks work how most do. 40 to 60. I know Magic players. You have your fancy-dancy commander decks. This video is not made for you. It's made for Duel Masters fans. Even though many of you are going to be curious how much it is like Magic. I do see you. But of course, we have to bring up the simple fact that, well, this game had a lot of interesting mechanics that just really did work but kind of failed. First of all, let's talk about the life system. Unlike many other card games, it had a shield system that then protected your life. So when you started the game out, you would put 5 cards in front of you from your top of your deck, and that would be your shields. If your opponent could wipe out all 5 of your shields and then attack you once, the game was over. So there's no life points, there's no 8,000 life points, there's no 20 life points, or no 6 prize cards. But it's kind of closer to the Pokemon system with the prize cards. So, if your 5 cards are taken out, you completely lose. Then followed by that, we have a lot of the stuff that's Magic oriented. Once per turn, any card can be flipped over and turned into mana once. You tap mana or energy cards in order to basically summon creatures or use, I think they were called spells or something like that. And pretty much that is how you would summon creatures. And of course, there's Summoning Sickness, more magic-related content. And basically, you could choose to attack. You could hold off a monster's attack in order to basically protect yourself. Oh yes, Yu-Gi-Oh players. That's a scary concept. Summoning Sickness. For those not in the know, Summoning Sickness is when a card goes on the field and it can't attack turn 1. And yeah, I know Yu-Gi-Oh players. Scary. You can't smack a 4,000 attack Obelisk Tormentor on the field and go attack right away. I know. Scary times for you. But of course, we have to bring up the fact that what I said about attack points. You can see on the few Duel Master cards I flashed on the screen so far that a lot of them have really big attacks. And it really doesn't make sense. These huge attacks do feel very Yu-Gi-Oh! Or even early Digimon card game related. And I don't understand why the numbers are so big necessarily. Like, Magic has a very simplistic, creatures have a, let's say, 1, 2, 4, even sometimes 7 attack and then life. I don't understand why they felt it was necessary to just give these creatures, like, giant attack when damage calculation is just big number beats small number, and it shouldn't have been more complicated than that. I do feel like it's just to kind of give, like, those Yu-Gi-Oh players that big number. And like I said, they were trying to drag Yu-Gi-Oh players into the game, and obviously they failed at getting those Yu-Gi-Oh players in. Well, they failed at getting the Magic players in. The Magic players were playing Magic. The Pokemon players were playing Pokemon, and that's kind of the biggest failure here. Like, because of how little the game really advanced, the most thing that would advance the game forward was double shield breakers, which was special abilities that some cards had. That if they could hit your opponent, they could do double damage with shields. Unfortunately, it didn't do enough to advance the game. A lot of Duel Master games are kind of a war of attrition, like old Yu-Gi-Oh games, because they would last a lot longer. Unfortunately, at the time, Duel Masters just didn't have a way to advance it. Rather, your opponent overwhelmed you and you never could do anything. Like, or you guys would just go back and forth exchanging blows, and then eventually you would will each other down to 1 or 2 shields. And that was a big problem. There was nothing really to push the envelope or to really push people into the game. There was, I remember in the second set, the evolutions mechanic they were setting up, but the card game died after they started setting it up. So it's kind of like you had a good thing you were trying to push forward, but it went nowhere. And yeah, that's kind of the problem. Duel Masters was pretty interesting. I mean, heck, there were starter decks that came with a DVD to teach you how to play. Toys, merchandise, the anime, like I said, they really were trying to push the envelope forward. But, as I said, despite how much it played like Magic, well, Magic players were playing Magic. Yu-Gi-Oh! Big numbers didn't matter to Yu-Gi-Oh! Players because they were playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon players with their 6 prize cards were just playing Pokemon with their 6 prize cards. There was nothing there to drag people into Duel Masters. And it's really sad. I think if they really, really wanted to make this succeed, they needed to push the envelope. But the problem is, if you can't get into the playgrounds, you can't get people to put their money into it. And that's a massive issue. And I'll say it's probably what caused people not to go and buy it. I remember buying it and maybe dueling once or twice with a real person, and that's a real problem. There just wasn't enough people playing it. If you went to school with Duel Masters, there was no one to play with. You had a better chance walking in with your, Seto Kaiba starter deck versus attempting to have a real Duel Masters duel with someone. And because many of us were just using the starter decks anyway, everyone just had boring red and green decks. Yeah, they had all the same colors as Magic, except for yellow and white were a little different. There was no one running a black or blue deck. There was no one running just a yellow deck. We were just using stray cards that we got from packs with our starter decks, and no one really was changing or pushing the envelope. And that's the problem. There was no, hey, here's this character's deck who was maybe running black and blue. There was no one doing anything like that back in the day. And I think that's partially why the game died in the state it did. I mean, and of course, believe it or not, past the mid-2000s, in the mid-2010s, they tried to bring it back, and they named it the anime equivalent, Kachima, and it failed again. And the problem is, they changed the card game so much. They didn't keep the Japanese format that they used for the actual American card game back in the mid-2000s. They completely changed it again, so it was a brand new card game versus making it the same card game that people didn't know from the mid-2000s. So you couldn't even use your old cards with the new cards. So, old cards with the new. And right then and there, you yet again lost an audience who would have been interesting to play your new, game. And obviously it failed. It failed miserably, and it makes sense why it failed. And it just shows you can't just throw an anime out there and make something successful. There's a difference between stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Digimon, and Pokemon. Those three series hit people on the head. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the card game one, Pokemon was the video game one, and Digimon was the one that had the best anime, but also kind of succeeded at both, despite both not being as prevalent. And, yes, there were other series that attempted to be anywhere near the top. Metabots, Shaman, Zatch Bell, a few of these smaller series that they merchandisingly didn't do great, but they were still fun series. They sold some toys, and that's all they needed to do. But when it sat down and came to Duel Masters, it just never got the success it needed. And I don't blame the creators of Magic to just put the circle hole in the circle hole. Why try to make two card games work at the same time when one's not selling? And I'll say this is exactly why I think Duel Masters failed. Not enough people were interested, and it makes a lot of sense. I think in the future, we should probably just stop. Stuff like the One Piece card game. I love it, but at the same time, I think it's only successful because it's One Piece. This Disney one, I guarantee it's selling good because people love old Disney characters, and that's who they're pushing. I saw this really cool card with Stitch on it the other day, and I'm like, that's really cool. But it's the only reason why that game's doing good. The established ones who have the most shelf space, still to this day, are Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Magic. Just like it was back in the mid-2000s. Yes, there's Digimon somehow having a fourth or fifth card game out there. Don't know who the hell is still playing that, but it's there. And that's the thing. I think I'm going to wrap this video here because I don't think I have much more to say about this. Duel Masters, guys. Isn't that a blast from the past? And ask, is the anime any good? I watched 2 episodes of the old series, and I have no idea if anybody learned how to play the game from that. I really don't think so. But, hey, thank everyone for watching so much. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Geek out.